You think you know someone when you watch them struggle with a menu for 3 years, when they point at pictures instead of reading words, when they nod and smile because they don't understand what you just said. But sometimes the person who can't read your language has been writing in it better than you ever could. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was shared with us by one of our long-time viewers. From Yorkshire, he asked us to use a different name, but he wanted other men to hear what he learned. I thought I'd found peace when I moved to Cebu 3 years ago. My wife Sarah had been gone for 2 years, cancer took her fast, and Whitby felt like a graveyard every morning I woke up alone. The fishing boat was sold, the house was sold, and I had enough pension to live like a king in the Philippines. That's what the expat forums told me anyway. Find a simple life, find a simple woman, start over at 54. I wasn't looking for love when I walked into Esperanza's sewing shop that first week. I just needed my shirts hemmed. She was bent over an old Singer machine, black hair tied back, fingers moving like she was playing piano. When I spoke, she looked up with these huge brown eyes and smiled like I'd just told her the funniest joke in the world. "You speak English?" I asked, pointing at my shirts. She tilted her head, that smile never leaving. "Little bit," she said, holding her thumb and finger close together. "Little bit only." I felt something warm in my chest, not love, not yet. Something else. Like I could be useful again. Like I could take care of someone who needed taking care of. She was 35, never married, lived with her mother and sister in a concrete house 10 minutes from the market. When I started coming by every few days, bringing her small sewing jobs I didn't really need done, she'd try to talk to me in broken English. I'd point at things around the shop, teaching her words. Scissors, I'd say. Thread, needle. She'd repeat them back with that musical accent, clapping when she got them right. I felt like the smartest man alive. "You good teacher," she'd tell me, and I believed her. 3 months later, I asked her to marry me. Not because I was head over heels, but because it felt right. She needed security, I needed purpose. We could learn to love each other. That's what I told myself anyway. The day we got married at the city hall, she wore a white dress she'd sewn herself. When the clerk asked if she understood the ceremony, she looked at me with those big eyes. And I translated everything into simple English, speaking slowly like I was talking to a child. She nodded at all the right moments. "I understand," she said. "I promise." Our first year was like playing house with someone from another planet. Every morning I'd make coffee and try to teach her new words. She'd sit at our little kitchen table with this notebook, writing down what I taught her in careful block letters. When bills came in the mail, she'd bring them to me with a helpless shrug. "Too difficult," she'd say. "You read for me?" I handled everything. The electric bill, the water bill, her visa paperwork, even ordering food at restaurants. She'd point at pictures on the menu, and I'd translate for the waitress. I felt needed in a way I hadn't since Sarah got sick. "My husband very smart," she'd tell her sister when she came to visit. "He know everything." But teaching someone to read when they can't is like trying to explain color to someone who's blind. She'd stare at words like they were hieroglyphs. I'd point at cat and she'd say dog. I'd show her book and she'd call it paper. Sometimes I wondered if she had some kind of learning problem, but she was so eager to please, so grateful for my patience, that I kept trying. She was sweet and quiet and made me feel like a good man. That was enough. The letters started coming. In our second year. Thin blue envelopes with her name written in elegant cursive. The first time one arrived, I was getting the mail and saw it mixed in with our electric bill and some flyers. Esperanza Stevenson, written in flowing script across the front. No return address. I brought it inside and held it out to her. "Letter for you," I said. She took it from my hands like it was made of glass, stared at the front for a long moment, then tucked it quickly into her apron pocket. "From my cousin," she said, not looking at me. "In Manila." "Want me to read it to you?" I asked. No, is nothing important. Just girl talk." I didn't think much of it. Everyone has family. But over the next few months, more letters came. Always the same handwriting. Always that same careful way she'd take them and disappear into the bedroom for a few minutes. When she'd come back out, her cheeks would be flushed and she'd be quieter than usual. I'd ask her about them and she'd wave her hand dismissively, cousin only, talking about her children. But I noticed she never threw them away. And I noticed she started checking the mailbox every day around noon, timing it for when I was usually taking my afternoon nap. "Your cousin writes a lot," I said one day. "Filipino family," she said with a laugh that sounded forced. "We like to talk." The third letter that week, I decided to pay attention. I watched her open it, saw her eyes move across the page. Not the slow, puzzled movement of someone struggling with words, but the quick, fluid motion of someone reading with ease. She was focused, absorbed, her lips moving slightly as she read. When she noticed me watching, she folded the letter quickly and smiled. "Cousin, say hello to you," she said. But there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something like guilt. That night, lying in bed next to her, I started thinking about all the times she'd claimed not to understand something. How she'd bring me restaurant menus with a confused expression, but somehow always knew which dishes she wanted. How she'd ask me to read the labels on medicine bottles, but never seemed surprised by what they said. How she'd sit at the kitchen table with her notebook, writing those careful block letters, but I'd never actually seen her struggle with forming the words, just copying them. "Esperanza," I whispered in the dark. "Yes?" "Do you really not know how to read?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she rolled over and put her hand on my chest. "Why you ask this?" "Just wondering." "I know little bit," she said. "You teach me, remember, I learning every day." But something in her voice told me she was lying. The next morning, while she was at the market, I went looking for those letters. I felt like a criminal going through her things, but I had to know. I checked her dresser drawers, looked under the mattress, searched through her sewing basket. Finally, in the back of our bedroom closet, behind a stack of fabric, I found a shoebox. Inside were dozens of letters, all in that same elegant handwriting. I picked up the first one and started reading. "My dearest Esperanza," it began. "Your last letter made me laugh until I cried. The story about Arthur trying to teach you the word for refrigerator for the 10th time was priceless. I can picture his face when you pretended not to understand. You're a better actress than you know." My hands started shaking. I read the next paragraph. "I know this is difficult for you, pretending to be someone you're not. But you've always been practical, and I understand why you chose security over love. I just wish things could have been different between us." The letter was signed Miguel. I grabbed another one, this one dated just 2 weeks ago. "Fair Esperanza, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding you coming to Dubai. My position at the international school is stable now, and I could help you get a teaching position here. Your English is better than most native speakers I work with. We could have the life we talked about before you married Arthur." I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of my wife's secret life. Letter after letter revealed a woman I didn't know, someone witty and intelligent and articulate, someone who wrote poetry and discussed philosophy and had opinions about world politics, someone who'd been lying to me for 3 years. Then I found the copies, carbon paper copies of letters she'd written back. Her handwriting was beautiful, her words more elegant than anything I'd ever heard her speak aloud. "Dearest Miguel," one began, "Arthur is a good man, but I feel like I'm suffocating in this performance. Sometimes I forget who I really am. When I'm with him, I'm this simple village girl who needs everything explained to her. When I write to you, I remember that I have a college degree, that I speak 3 languages, that I have thoughts and dreams," beyond hemming his shirts and nodding at his explanations. Another letter. "He teaches me English words I learned in school 15 years ago. Yesterday he spent 20 minutes explaining what democracy means. I wanted to tell him I wrote my thesis on democratic institutions in Southeast Asia, but instead I clapped and said, 'I understand now.' I hate myself for this lie, but I hate myself more for needing his pension money." I found love letters, real love letters. "Miguel, when I close my eyes and read your words, I remember what it feels like to be myself, to be loved for my mind and not just my gratitude. Arthur sees me as this grateful little wife who doesn't know anything about the world. You see me as the woman I am. My chest felt tight. 3 years of marriage and I'd never known her at all. I'd been in love with a performance, a character she'd created to make me feel important. Every English lesson, every grateful smile, every helpless shrug over a restaurant menu, it had all been an act. She could probably read better than me. Her English was probably perfect. I heard her key in the lock and quickly shoved the letters back in the box. My hands were shaking as I put everything back where I found it. When she walked into the bedroom, I was sitting on the edge of the bed trying to look normal. "How was the market?" I asked. "Good," she said, but she could tell something was wrong. "You okay? You look sick." "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I felt like I'd discovered my whole life was a lie. That night at dinner, I watched her carefully. Every word out of her mouth sounded fake now. When she asked me to help her understand the news on TV, I wanted to scream. When she brought me a letter from the phone company and asked me to read it, I wanted to throw it in her face and ask her to stop pretending. But I didn't. I read it to her in my patient teacher voice, and she thanked me with that same grateful smile she'd been giving me for 3 years. "You're so smart," she said. "I'm lucky to have you." I couldn't sleep that night. Every memory of our relationship was poisoned now. The day we met, had she been laughing at me inside her head when I spoke to her like she was a child? Our wedding day, when I translated the ceremony for her, had she understood every word already? All those English lessons, all those times I felt so proud when she learned a new word, had she been sitting there biting her tongue to keep from showing me how much she already knew? The next morning I confronted her. She was making breakfast, humming some Filipino song under her breath. "Esperanza," I said, "we need to talk." She looked up from the pan, and something in my voice must have warned her. Her face went very still. "What about?" "About Miguel." The spatula slipped from her hand and clattered on the floor. For a moment she looked like she might deny it. Then her shoulders sagged and she sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "You found the letters? All of them?" She covered her face with her hands. "I'm sorry, Arthur. I'm so sorry." "Which part are you sorry for? The lying about not being able to read? The secret boyfriend? Or pretending to love me for 3 years? She looked up and there were tears in her eyes. But when she spoke, her voice was different, clear and articulate, and without any trace of the broken English she'd been using since I met her. "I'm sorry for all of it, but mostly I'm sorry you had to find out this way." Hearing her speak perfect English felt like being slapped. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" "How long have you been able to speak English?" "Since I was 12. I went to university, Arthur. I have a degree in education. I taught high school for 10 years before the economy got bad and I had to start sewing to survive." "And Miguel?" She was quiet for a long time. "I met him online 3 years ago. Before I met you. We had plans. But then my mother got sick and needed surgery, and Miguel was still trying to get established in Dubai. I needed money fast, and you?" She trailed off. "And I was the easy mark. You were the kind man who could solve my problems. By lying to me. By giving you what you wanted. You didn't want a wife, Arthur. You wanted someone to take care of, someone to teach, someone to feel superior to." Her voice was getting stronger, more confident, like she was finally dropping a mask she'd been wearing for years. "On our second date, you told me you liked that I was simple, that you were tired of complicated women. So I became simple. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Every time I showed any knowledge about anything, you'd get this look on your face, like you were disappointed, like you preferred me confused. So I stayed confused." She stood up and started pacing. "Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend? To be stupid? To bite your tongue when someone explains something you learned in school? To act grateful for being talked down to every single day?" "I never talked down to you. You talked to me like I was a child, Arthur, every single day for 3 years. When you explained how elections work, when you taught me the word for democracy, when you read me the news like I couldn't possibly understand it myself. I have a degree in political science. I probably know more about how governments work than you do." I felt sick. Why didn't you just tell me? Because you wouldn't have wanted me if I had. You wanted simple and grateful and dependent. So that's what I gave you. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Miguel wants me to come to Dubai. He has a teaching position waiting for me. I've been trying to work up the courage to tell you. How long have you been planning to leave? Since the beginning. This was never supposed to be permanent, Arthur. It was supposed to be until I could get back on my feet, until Miguel got established, until my mother was healthy again. She looked at me with something like pity. I thought you knew. I thought you understood this was transactional. I thought we were building something. We were, but not what you think. She sat back down and reached across the table, but I pulled my hand away. I do care about you, Arthur. That's the truth. You're a good man. You've been kind to me, generous, patient, but I was never in love with you. I couldn't be in love with someone who needed me to be less than I am. The worst part was that she was right. I had wanted someone simple, someone who would make me feel smart and important and needed, someone who wouldn't challenge me or make me feel inadequate. Sarah had been my intellectual equal, and sometimes that had been exhausting. With Esperanza, I thought I'd found peace, but it had all been an illusion. The letters you wrote to me, I said. The ones in the box, were those real? She nodded. I wrote them but never gave them to you. I wrote them when I felt guilty about lying, when I wanted to explain why I couldn't love you the way you deserved, when I wanted to tell you who I really was. She stood up again. Would you like to read them? I did read them later that day, after she'd gone to her sister's house to give me space to think. Page after page of apologies and explanations, and a kind of tenderness I'd never heard in her voice. She wrote about trying to love me, about appreciating my kindness, about feeling trapped by the lies she'd started. She wrote about Miguel, about the connection they had, about feeling like herself again when she read his letters. But she also wrote about me, about the good moments we'd shared, about hoping I'd find someone who could love me completely without pretending to be someone else. Dear Arthur, one letter began. I know you think I'm ungrateful, but I'm more grateful than you know. You saved my family when my mother needed surgery. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You treated me with respect, even when you thought I was ignorant. I wish I could have been the wife you deserved, but I couldn't stop being who I am. I hope someday you'll understand. Another letter. I watch you sometimes when you think I'm not looking. You have such gentle hands when you show me words in the dictionary. You make coffee for me every morning without being asked. You hold doors and carry my bags and treat me like something precious. I wish I could feel for you what you feel for me. I wish pretending to be simple didn't make me feel so small. The last letter was dated just 2 weeks ago. I've decided to tell you the truth. I can't live this lie anymore. Miguel has offered me a real life, a life where I can be myself, and I'm going to take it. I hope you'll forgive me someday. I hope you'll find someone who can love you without hiding who she is. You deserve honesty, Arthur. You deserve someone real. That evening she came back home. We sat at the kitchen table like we had 1,000 times before, but everything was different now. Are you angry? She asked. I don't know what I am. Miguel's visa came through. I can be in Dubai next month. Is that what you want? Yes. She didn't hesitate. But I want to leave things right between us. I want you to understand that the kindness was real, even if everything else was performance. 3 years, Esperanza. 3 years of my life. 3 years where you took care of someone who needed taking care of. 3 years where you felt useful and important. That's not nothing, Arthur. She reached across the table again, and this time I let her take my hand. I know it hurts to find out it wasn't love, but it was something. It was gratitude and respect, and a kind of partnership. That has value too. I looked at her, really, looked at her for the first time since I'd known her. Without the mask of confusion and simplicity, she was beautiful in a different way, confident, self-possessed, the kind of woman who was completely out of my league. And would you have married me if you didn't need the money? Probably not. Would Miguel have married you if you'd been broke? She smiled sadly. Probably not either. But he loves me for who I am, not for who I pretend to be. That makes all the difference. Over the next 2 weeks, we talked more honestly than we had in 3 years. She told me about her real life, her education, her dreams. I told her about Sarah, about how scared I'd been to be alone, about how I'd wanted someone who needed me because I was afraid of not being needed. She helped me understand that my impulse to take care of someone wasn't wrong, but my need to feel superior was. You can love someone without needing them to be smaller than you, she said. Sarah knew that. She loved you as an equal. I'd forgotten how to be an equal. You can learn. Again. The day before she left for Dubai, she gave me one last letter. This one she handed to me directly. Read this after I'm gone, she said. And Arthur, thank you for everything. I read the letter that night, sitting alone in our kitchen. My dear Arthur, it began. By the time you read this, I'll be on a plane to my new life. I want you to know that even though I couldn't love you romantically, I will always care about you. You gave me safety when I needed it most. You treated me with kindness even when you thought I was ignorant. That says something beautiful about who you are. I hope you find someone who can see that beauty without needing you to feel superior to see it yourself. I hope you find someone who challenges you and loves you and makes you feel like the good man you are. Mahal kita, Arthur. In Tagalog, that means I love you. Not the way you wanted me to love you, but the way I actually do. With gratitude, with respect, with hope for your happiness. Take care of yourself. Esperanza. I kept that letter. 6 months later, I'm still here in Cebu, but I'm learning to see it differently. I'm learning to see myself differently too. I volunteer at a literacy center now, teaching English to adults who actually want to learn. My students don't pretend to be confused to make me feel smart. They ask hard questions and challenge my explanations and make me work to be a better teacher. It's harder than teaching Esperanza was, but it's real. Sometimes I get emails from her. She's teaching at an international school in Dubai, living with Miguel, happy in a way I never saw when she was with me. She signs them "Your friend Esperanza" and asks how I'm doing, if I'm taking care of myself, if I've met anyone. I haven't met anyone yet, but for the first time in years I think I might be ready to. Ready to love someone as an equal instead of a project. Ready to be loved for who I am instead of what I can provide. I understand now what she was trying to tell me in those letters. Love isn't about being needed, it's about being known. For 3 years I thought I was loving her, but I was really just loving the idea of being necessary to someone. She taught me the difference, even though it took losing her to learn it. Sometimes the best teachers are the ones who show you what you need to know by walking away.